Yeah, indeed.
Hello, I'm Lynette Hill, and this is the story of Mimi Galilei, the youngest person ever to sign the Official Secrets Act of the United Kingdom. Can you keep a secret? I mean a real secret, a proper secret, a secret that could get you killed if you tell it, or someone else killed. Would you voluntarily take that secret on before you even knew what it was? Well, that's what Mimi Galilei did when she became the youngest person ever to sign the Official Secrets Act of the United Kingdom. She and all of her colleagues at Bletchley Park had to sign that document the minute that they walked into the park. They went straight to the director's office, signed the paper with a revolver sitting on the desk besides the paper, so that everyone understood the severity of the punishment if they talked too much, simply for talking too much. Now, Mimi came to Bletchley as a result of World War II. She was evacuated along with her mother and sister because of the bombing in London. And while her mother and older sister got jobs at Bletchley Park, jobs they couldn't talk about even at home, even to Mimi, she had to go to school along with all the other evacuee children in temporary buildings crushed together with teachers who didn't know them. And there was just too much going on in the world outside. Mimi couldn't keep her mind on her studies, and her grades just crashed. And finally her mother said fine. And she went and spoke to the director at Bletchley Park, who said yeah, Mimi could get a job there if she was willing to keep the secret, if her mother was willing for her to keep the secret. And so her mother went to Mimi and said, well, and that's how Mimi came to Bletchley Park and began to work under the eye of the director's secretary, the formidable Miss Reed. And Mimi's job was as messenger. She would go to the Central Directory, which was in the old fruit barn of the great estate that housed Bletchley Park. And the messages would come in brought in by motorcycle riders, women astride big motorcycles that they had ridden in from the coast, and those women were armed. They carried revolvers, and they turned the raw messages over to the central index, where they were recorded and sorted. And then Mimi might receive a batch of messages for Hut 8. She didn't know what the messages were. Today we know that these were intel from the German Navy. And these went to the hut where Alan Turing worked. Did Mimi know who he was? Probably at some point, but she didn't know what he did or what anyone else did. But from Hut 8 she would get another pack of messages to take to Hut 4. These were the messages that had already been decrypted. And then in Hut 4, Naval Intelligence and MI6 would go over the messages and create a report that completely wiped out the fact of how that information was found. It was sent out in anonymous bulletins by radio to the senior commanders in the field and in London. And Mimi did this for quite a while until she graduated to work in some of the huts. And as to what she did there, well, she hasn't really ever said. Now, eventually the war ended. Other people had parades and medals and were honored as heroes, but people in Bletchley Park, they still had to keep that secret. And they just went on about their normal lives until the late 70s, early 1980s, when finally the secret was broken. She kept that secret for most of her life. Could you do that? At 14? That's what Mimi Galilei did.